Langley, Virginia, the air is cold. Conditioned. Sterile. A man sits at a desk. American. Intelligence. Or so the badge says. His shirt is damp at the armpits. Sweat has no ideology. He is typing a death warrant. Not for a man. For a myth. He types the words. Target has a weakness. He pauses. The smoke from his cigarette coils upward, slow and patient, like fire learning how to breathe. He continues. Code name, woman. They were not talking about espionage. They were not talking about secrets hidden in microfilms. They were talking about a president. To the brown-skinned millions of the archipelago, he was the proclaimer. The tongue of the people. A messianic figure carved from the volcanic rock of Java. But to the men in the cold rooms of the West, he was something else entirely. A spark. And sparks are dangerous. Because sparks can become fires. And fires do not ask permission. 2:15 or the man. Let's look at the man. Sukarno. He didn't walk, he glided. He stood at the fault line of the world, the American eagle on one side, the Russian bear on the other, and he had the audacity to warm his hands at both flames without kneeling to either. He refused the leash. And there is nothing, absolutely nothing, that terrifies an empire more than a man it cannot extinguish. He was not a politician. That word is too small. Too grey. He was combustion. He painted his country the way he lived his life, with broad, reckless strokes, with colour that bled beyond the lines. He understood something the West never did. Revolution, he said, is a matter of desire. Not economics. Not logistics. Desire. Without fire in the chest, there is no freedom. For Sukarno, revolution and romance were not separate acts. They were the same ignition. You seize freedom the way you seize a lover, with both hands, without apology, before the moment cools. Step into his living room. The walls burn. Paintings. Women. Naked. Unashamed. To Puritan eyes, it was obscenity. To stiff-collared diplomats, pathology. But Sukarno was not collecting bodies. He was collecting proof. When the West calls us primitive, he said, I show them that we are capable of loving beauty. It was defiance rendered in oil and skin. A declaration, we are alive. We feel heat. And we will not apologize for it. For him, art, woman, revolution were not three things. They were one fire seen from different angles. 5:30, the Hollywood incident. Now. The temperature rises. Mid-1950s. The Cold War at full boil. Asia is tinder. Indonesia is the largest pile of dry wood anyone has ever seen. Washington panics. They try bribery. The fire laughs. They try charm. The fire drinks their vodka and goes home. So the men in Langley change tactics. They stop thinking like spies and start thinking like arsonists. They ask the wrong question. Not how do we stop him, but how do we stain him? And so they circle the flame. Silk sheets. Perfume. Rumors. Time shifts. Hollywood. 1956. A party at the Beverly Hills Hotel. Champagne. Ambition. Expensive cologne masking cheap fear. And into this room walks Sukarno. The fire enters. Conversation falters. Eyes follow. And across the room, Marilyn Monroe. The legend lives here. The sex symbol of the West meets the incendiary of the East. They say they spoke quietly. Away from cameras. Away from handlers. Marilyn, tired of being a candle burned down to wax, whispered, "I want to go somewhere real. I want to go to Bali." And Sukarno, ever the architect of ignition, answered softly, "Indonesia is where the soul learns how to breathe. Come. I will give you an island." Did they disappear? Did the fire touch the fire? History shrugs. 7:45, the panic, CIA and KGB. But the FBI did not shrug. Hoover did not shrug. Files were opened. Project Finery. They watched Marilyn like hawks circling a rabbit. Why? Because in 1956, Marilyn Monroe was not just an actress. She was the soft power of the American empire wrapped in satin. If Sukarno, this brown dictator, this troublemaker, could charm the ultimate symbol of American desire, what else could he take? It wasn't about sex. It was about gravity. He was stealing the orbit. So the panic metastasizes. Operation Archangel. The empire decides to make pornography. A fake tape. A fake scandal. Fire smothered with shame. They cannot even cast correctly. A Hispanic actor. A rubber mask. Grunts instead of language. The arrogance is almost admirable. But the tape fails. The Soviets tried too. Different uniforms. Same hunger. The KGB didn't use movie stars. They used professionals. Swallows. Women trained in the art of conversation, seduction, and psychology. There is a story, perhaps apocryphal, perhaps not, that sums up the man perfectly. Soviet agent sent beautiful women to his quarters during a state visit. Their mission, compromise the president. Get him on tape. Blackmail him. The next morning, the KGB officers waited for the panic. They waited for Sukarno to beg for silence. Instead, Sukarno allegedly watched the footage and laughed. He turned to the ambassador and asked, "Can I have extra copies? My people will be so proud to see their president is still active." The blackmail failed because the target felt no shame. Because Sukarno understood something fundamental. The bedroom was not a refuge. It was another furnace. He knew the cameras watched. And he did not dim the lights. Let them look. Let them see a nation still burning. 10:15, the architecture of desire, the wives. But let us leave the spies. Spies are cold. Let us talk about the heat at home. Because the real story isn't about foreign agents or Hollywood stars. It is about the architecture of his heart. History whispers of 9 wives. To the Western mind, it is excess. A harem. A flaw. But look closer. It was a map of Indonesia itself. Fatmawati. The first. She wasn't just a wife, she was the foundation. She wove the Sang Saka Merah Putih, the first flag. When she cried, the nation felt the dampness. She represented the struggle. The purity of 1945. But revolutions evolve. And so did he. Enter Hartini. 1953, this was the earthquake. Sukarno fell for her not in a palace, but at a dining table in central Java. She was a widow, a modern Javanese woman. And when he asked to marry her, the feminists of Indonesia rose up. Fatmawati left the palace in protest. For the first time, the great lover was at war with the women of his own nation. Why did he do it? Because Sukarno could not separate his personal truth from his political truth. He refused to hide her as a mistress. Hypocrisy, he said, is the vice of the West. He would rather be hated for honesty than loved for a lie. And then, the final act. The twilight flame. Dewi. The Japanese jewel. Proof that this was not a provincial fire, but a blaze seen across oceans. If Fatmawati was the struggle, and Hartini was the reality, Dewi was the fantasy. He didn't just marry her, he curated her. He built her a palace. Critics said he was an old man chasing youth, a king losing his grip. But read his letters to her, written on presidential stationery in the middle of coups and hyperinflation. They are not the letters of a predator. They are the letters of a poet terrified of the dark. My dear Dewi, he wrote, I am just a small man who needs a place to rest his head. Here lies the paradox of the Titan. The man who stood on a podium and shouted at the United Nations, the man who told America to go to hell with your aid, was, in the silence of his bedroom, profoundly lonely. The women were not trophies. They were anchors. He was a man holding onto a hurricane, the hurricane of a fragmented, impossible nation. And every time he felt the centrifugal force tearing him apart, he reached for a hand. Soft skin. A voice that didn't talk about economics. He believed that by loving many, he was loving the world. It was a dangerous philosophy. A theology of desire. To choose would be to limit. And limitation was the enemy of flame. 1345, the fall. But fire does not negotiate. It warms. Or it destroys. It does not care who lit the match. Behind the women, jealousy. Behind the cheers of Merdeka. Knives being sharpened in silence. The blaze spreads faster than one man can contain. You cannot marry the world without breaking someone's heart. The narrative turned. The CIA's pornography didn't work. But the whisper campaign at home? That worked. By 1965, the rice lines were long. People were hungry. And the image of the president sipping champagne with his Japanese wife, discussing art while the rupiah collapsed, became a weapon. They took his heat and recast it as decadence. A Nero. A distraction. A man chasing skirts while the beams of the house rotted. The final irony is cruel. It was not sex that killed him. It was not Marilyn. It was betrayal from within. The final years. Cold rooms. Silence. The palace becomes a cage. The man who lived in sunlight now survives in shadow. And yet, even then, he never stopped loving. The land. The people. The women. To him, they were the same force. Life insisting on being felt. He once said, hang your ideals as high as the sky. If you fall, you will fall among the stars. And he fell. Not like a scream. Like embers settling. The fire that freed a nation was the same fire that consumed its architect. Without it, there is no Indonesia. And even now, long after the flames, the ground is still warm.